Okay, so hello everyone. Now we can start. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm DB from Upriver team. Upriver is an AI data engineering platform. Omri is gonna share more about Upriver and today's session. So today's session is about automating DataOps workflow with proactive agents. So this is a topic where we are gonna cover like how proactive agents can help you with your end-to-end data engineering workflows, right? So uh, most of the teams have monitoring and observability solution already set up. But the problem is like when something breaks, it requires like a lot of manual work to get it up and run. So the whole session is around how you can automate like your whole data ops workflow with proactive agents. Before we start, I also would like to share that we are launching a new initiative at Upriver that is our AI data engineering Slack community. So if you're someone who's like looking for, active discussions around data engineering topics, AI related to AI, and if you have any specific questions, or if you just want to connect with the people in the community, you can join this Slack group. We just started it, so you will see like it will be, it'll grow bigger as we grow. And again, so I'm pretty excited for today's session. We have Omri here. Omri is CDO at Upriver, and yeah, he is going to lead the session. So, Omri, over to you. You can get started from here, and I'll share like all the joining links and everything in the chat.
Perfect. I just see in the Q&A section, somebody said that the chat is disabled, David. So I don't know if you're following that, but thank you very much anyways, and thank you everybody for joining. Hope this will be an interesting session. Feel free, as I talk, to ask anything in the Q&A or chat, and we'll answer it as part of the conversation. Again, this is the first time at Upriver we're hosting a webinar, so we're very excited to be here and share this with you guys. Let me share my screen now. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Should be able to see Slack. Davey, I'm counting on you to tell me if you can see the
No, not yet.
presentation.
Not yet. Yeah, we
How
see
about
it now.
now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Omri, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Upriver. And as Davey mentioned earlier, feel free to join our Slack community. This is where we'll be sharing things about both what we're doing in our company, as well as things changing in the data engineering landscape, especially around the use of AI. Before I dive into the topic, just a quick word on what Upriver actually is. So we're building what we call the AI data engineering platform. The idea is, how do we make AI useful for data engineering workflows? We've seen it completely transform the way in which software engineers are now working with AI. That revolution has not fully come yet to AI, to data engineering workflows. And that is because that requires a lot more context, a lot more things that change when working with data. Those of you out there who are data engineers, you definitely know this. So what we're trying to do is bring all of the context and abilities that are necessary for data engineering and enhance the capabilities of data engineers to actually perform all of their tasks. Again, I don't want to make this just an intro to Upriver. Feel free to join the community, ask questions there. We're more than happy to answer anything. So let's talk a bit about what DataOps actually is. DataOps is kind of taking the flow of DevOps by saying data engineers are now the owners of the full data lifecycle. So it means when a business requirement comes, how do I understand what I need to build? How do I plan it out, create everything, create the relevant parts of my data environment, and then release this, make this into usable data sets that business users and AI agents can even consume these days. And a lot of the things that we're seeing inside DataOps is, how do we actually maintain the data environment, right? So it's very easy to write a pipeline, to build a new table, but maintaining it over time, making sure that we're continuing to ingest the right data, not dropping things as things are constantly changing in the source systems. Being able to keep them up to date is one of the key challenges that data engineers face. How do we keep up with all of the business requests, all of the changing life of the data, and then make that usable? And that is essentially what DataOps is, the full flow of data lifecycle and how do we maintain our data environment. And over the last year, this has completely changed, right? We're used to seeing this done by humans. That means, and Divi mentioned this earlier, companies have set up data observability tools. Companies have set up DBT tests and great expectations, and all of these different alerts and monitors to be able to understand when something goes wrong in the environment. And then they had to figure out what they actually want to monitor. And once some alert has actually appeared for them, they had to then try and triage it, understand what is causing this issue, how they should treat this, and make this actually something that they can work with. And this is, anyone out there who's been a data engineer knows how problematic this has been and how many issues you have. And not just issues, we also have a ton of false positives. Something is actually changing the data, which is fine. How do we convey that message? How do we understand that's a desired change and not raise alerts and that we have to track down and not know what to do with? So up until a few months ago, really, is when we actually had to do like all of this manually. When all of these new AI tools came out, especially Claude and Cursor, when we started having MCPs to connect them, we moved to the assisted by AI stage. That meant that we can now use these tools to try and help us write DBT tests, try and help us write SQL queries, try and do everything and assist us when we're trying to set up these monitors. And also, once an issue comes, we'd have to go and then try and copy paste this into Claude. So maybe it can understand exactly what is happening in the entire environment so we can work with all of this, right? This is assisted by AI. And today, when we're talking about the age of agents in the last half a year, we're really seeing this change into where we can let agents do the full flow of solving these issues. They can understand what needs to be monitored. They can understand what happens when an alert comes. Does that mean maybe it's a false alarm in which you change our configuration? Or maybe we actually can solve it? Or we might need to go and talk to the source team because they're changing something without telling us. We need to understand all of this flow, and agents can now do all of this for us. So data operations have really moved from something manual to agentic workflows. And this is what we'll see in the hands-on in just a bit. But don't just take my word for it. I think Databricks has announced something that shows exactly where the industry is going. And they showed this exactly in their last summit. So they released a private preview, what they call Genie Zero Ops. The idea is that you can use natural language to tell the system what kind of monitors you want to put in place. That knows how to take Databricks' native AI, native data quality capabilities, put them on the relevant tables and data models, and then detect when an issue comes up, kind of like using Monte Carlo with an agent to set up the monitors. And then it can diagnose and find how to repair things and do all of this using Databricks native capabilities without changing your production environment. So we can see the images here of what this actually looks like. And the idea is honestly brilliant, right? We can tell it what we want the system to do, and it's going to run through the entire DataOps lifecycle for us. But one of the key things, and I don't know what platform you guys have, and maybe we should have done a poll in this webinar, but most companies don't just have Databricks. They have Databricks and Snowflake and maybe sometimes Redshift and Postgres and data just sitting around in some S3 bucket that people take and use as CSVs. That is what the majority of data environments actually look like. And that's where it becomes extremely difficult to do because you don't have all of this context. And this is exactly what Upriver is able to bring. Upriver brings that same experience that Databricks had, but does it wherever your data lives. So it helps you understand what to detect and also lets you set up monitors in natural language. And we'll see both ways in the hands-on in a second. Then whenever an issue comes up, it's able to diagnose it, give you exactly a validated fix and tell you what it needs to do so that you can approve it. And this goes to alerts that you might have in your system, but also to business questions that people are asking in Slack that you need to tackle down. The idea is Upriver is everywhere you need to be and does this in a proactive way to help you solve issues. So just before we jump into the hands-on, how does Upriver actually do this and what does it mean to be able to do these things? The main thing you need to do, and this is where just generic off-the-shelf agents fail, is you need to build a context, what we call the data world model for the agents. This is based off of all of the different parts of the data environment, the orchestration tools that you might have, the different data platforms, again, from OLTPs to OLAPs and wherever you actually might have data moving, including just raw buckets, and all of the code. That can be code either generating data, stuff software engineers are using, or code transforming and pulling that data in, such as dbt, Spark, and whatever you might be using. Upriver then creates this data world model and lets different agents use this. This can be our internal agent, which we'll see in just a bit. This can also be external agents with extensions into Claude, Coco, and the Cursor, sorry. And it can also be messaging apps that you can use. So before I jump into the hands-on, we do offer a free trial. This will be the last promo I'm doing for Upriver. Extremely easy. Within minutes, you can set up your entire stack. Upriver starts learning how to use that. And then you can start using it to essentially automate all of your data ops and get a co-pilot and an agent that understands your data environment. Now we'll jump to the hands-on. Before that, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the Q&A here or in the chat. But what we'll cover is essentially how to set up the monitors you might want in the system, both using natural language, which I've taken the exact example you might have seen in the Genie Zero Ops demo, and then how a proactive agent automatically responds to alerts coming in, answers business as usual questions coming in from stakeholders, and lastly, how it does that with scheduled routines to make sure that over time you keep having your environment exactly as you'd expect. Divi, because I can't see the chat and so on, just tell me if there are any questions or if I should move on to the hands-on demonstration.
There are a few questions. I'll share them in the end of the session. So
Okay.
yeah, thanks again.
Okay, perfect. So just tell me and make sure that we're on time so that we'll have all the time just to continue and do that.
Yes.
Perfect.
And also everyone, if the chat is still disabled for you, feel free to join the Slack and we can continue our conversation with Slack in parallel.
100%. So let's jump into the system. First thing we're doing is we can tell the system what we want to monitor, right? So we can tell it monitor the daily revenue, and if something changes here, we can start doing things. Again, Upriver is learning the entire context. So any table, any data asset appears like an asset that you can tag and see in the system. So we can see this is inside Snowflake telling us exactly which schema, which DB this is in once we're trying to use this. I'll start running this, and then as I've learned from a good friend, we're going to do a cooking show style demo because we'll put this in the oven. We don't want to wait for the agent to start doing it. So we can actually see what is happening, right? So we moved on to seeing what the system does. And essentially, it's learned exactly how to set up monitors for you, and it's writing it all here. And what's amazing about the way Upriver works in this regard is it's setting up the monitors in a native way inside your data platform. So you don't have to buy a data observability tool. You can use what Snowflake is already providing you. If you're using Databricks, it's the same thing. Each one of these different tools has a data quality and data observability functionality. And Upriver knows how to leverage them. So here in Snowflake, we can see it's suggesting to create data metric functions. These are data quality checks inside Snowflake and telling us exactly how it wants us to use them. And one more thing that's critical is it asks us before it tells us, before it's writing anything to production. So we can see if we want that, we can get this as code to then push into our code repo. And as well, if we were using dbt test, it might have suggested dbt that we want to use because it's learning the conventions inside our platform. What we're seeing here, and I assume all of you are thinking about this, doesn't seem very proactive yet. So now let's jump onto Slack and see what is actually happening that makes this proactive and how Upriver can help you maintain things even without you setting things up and knowing what you want to monitor. So here, I've moved on to our Slack environment and I've added Eddie. That's the fish we saw along the presentation, and that's our mascot. I've added him to our environment, and I've set up the integrations. This is, again, as I said, extremely simple and can be done within a few minutes once you connect. We'll see here, you just need to connect the relevant tools inside your environment. Once we have that, it starts analyzing exactly what should be set. This can take a few minutes. So I've already run this before, and you can see I've run it like a month ago. But essentially, it's connecting to all of the relevant channels that we have inside our Slack environment. It's connecting to all of these different Git repos and different databases and orchestration tools. And it's figuring out what should actually be done. So the first thing it's saying, I see one test is continuously failing. Maybe this is a test that needs to be changed. It looks and sees things about the freshness that might be wrong, and we might need to change the monitor we have. And then it's also reading the different things coming from the channels we have. Most importantly, and this is again where we start saying proactive things, it's suggesting what kind of routines we want to set up in our environment. So it's telling you that it's going to go over everything in Ask Data Engineering, a channel I think most data engineering teams have, where business users are asking them to do things. It's also going to triage every alert coming into the alerts channel, and it's going to set up the different routines. So I let it do this, and now it set up all of the different routines in our environment. So let's jump over and see them. Essentially, this will load in a sec. Sorry. But you can see this is a real demo now because things are taking time. Okay. So we can see all of the alerts it told me, its setups. And we can see here, this alert has actually been running daily and giving us information. We can later also jump to see exactly what this looks like. And now once we have this, we're able to be on top of everything. We have routines running for us and checking things. We know things in our alerts channel are actually going to be triaged. Let's see what that looks like. So like every data engineering organization, we've set up a data quality tool that's continuously firing alerts for us. Each one of these is then automatically triaged by Eddie in the system. So we can see that once an alert lands, it connects to it. It checks if it's something that it even has the capabilities of looking at, and then comes here and says exactly what the issue is. It told us that it was able to go across the entire stack, understanding that there was an issue. This row count is because we forgot to normalize data in the right way. It's not only doing that, it's telling us exactly how it should be fixed in the system. But what's cool is it's not just leaving it here. It's already opened a PR for us that we can look at. So I'll jump into GitHub and we can see all of the changes it created. This includes generating XML data for us to test, all of the different transformations we need to be running, an explanation of what has gone wrong and how we need to run this. This is exactly where proactive agents let us maintain a system extremely easily because we don't need to track every alert. I think more interestingly, though, is if we go to Upriver notifications, it's also going to create a report of all the different issues that have come in the last period that we're looking at. Because we've set it daily, it's going to run daily. And it's going to give us a prioritized list of all of the different issues we might have in the platform. So we can see the throw count that we talked about. It can tell us what we need to do, which one of these is actionable by us as a data engineering team, and which one requires talking to different teams. Each one where we can actually solve, it has already opened a PR for. So essentially, the on-call process for data engineers completely changes. From tracking down every issue, trying to find the root cause, you can just go into the system and essentially see the prioritized list of all of the already resolved tickets with suggestions for fixes. Last thing I want to show is this channel, Ask Data Engineering. And this is usually what it looks like, right? Somebody's asking a question, hoping to get some answer. What we've done is we're now able to just ask questions. And because we've set Eddie to listen to this, it's actually going to do it for us. So again, this is a live demo, so hopefully this will work, but we can already see it acknowledged what we're trying to do, and it's going to investigate, right? So notice that I've asked it a question with business context. I have no idea what RFM segments are. This is something to do with e-commerce. I have not told it where to look inside my DB and all of my data. So essentially what this is doing, it's going to analyze all of this data And then once it has the information, it's going to come back and solve it for us. This is taking a few moments. Hopefully it will actually work. And let's see. Okay, amazing. So what it's done is it's actually gone and analyzed this. It tells us exactly which table we have issues from, where this is coming from, and so on, how it came up with the conclusion. And even more so, it's then connecting us here so we can go and see the full thought process that has undergone in the system to actually solve this. It's not just saying, okay, this is the answer and now you can trust it. It's going to show us all of the logic and the logical steps it has taken to come up with the answer. And once this loads in a sec, we'll be able to see that, including all of the different queries that it ran against the DB. So we can come here, we can see exactly all of the tools and so that it's used. I'll open this here inside the Upriver platform. We can see everything the system did. And we can see exactly how it came up with that understanding. It looked at the different tables and so on. It understood where this calculation is coming from and if it's taking into consideration canceled. And that way we can go and solve any issue that we might see. I think this essentially covers what we wanted to show in the hands-on demonstration. Go back to our slides here, and I'll put this so you guys can, again, see anything here and come and ask any questions. Now I'd love to move on to a Q&A, Divi, so back to you. And you lead this from now, because I can't see the questions.
So we got some interesting questions. So I'll get it like one by one. So the first question which we got is like, let me make it live. What if DBT models start producing fewer rows, but the job still succeed? How would the agent figure out whether the problem is in the source data or a recent code change or the model logic itself?
100%. And that is a great question. And if we go back to what I was showing, so I'll go back to Slack here so you guys can see. If we go back to the alerts that we showed, this is exactly the issue that happened here, right? The system is working and suddenly we saw a drop. That can be a DBT model, specifically that's what we see here as well, where suddenly we're getting less data than we're used to seeing. What the system is actually doing is it's not just looking to say, okay, has the DBT job succeeded or failed? It's gone to check all of the different code changes that have happened. It's gone to look at the actual data, tracked all of this analysis over time to see what might happen. I'll try and open the full task so we can see how it analyzed all of this. But what we'll see here is extremely interesting. We'll see all of the different queries the system ran to be able to understand this issue. So we can see here the way it's analyzing these different values coming in. What happened with these things? It's going to check the trends to see if they actually make sense and whether this is just an issue with what we saw. And we see exactly all of this. So being able to understand, are these trends real? What code changes happened? What actually happened in my DBT is what makes this interesting. And then being able to track this across the entire pipeline and lineage is where you can actually solve things more than just DBT issues.
I see. Thank you for answering. So we have another question, which is more about, I'll share. It's my favorite topic. How do you prevent the agent from hallucinating? Root cause or confidentiality suggesting effects based on incomplete context. So yeah,
Okay.
Basically how you deal with
hallucination. Great question. Again, great question. So essentially, we've built a harness ourselves that traps the model. And what we've done as part of that harness is we've made sure that all of the answers are grounded in data that we are able to see. That way we can understand exactly what we're doing. And as you can see here, we're also displaying all of this logic and making this extremely evident and clear to the user. Because we want to gain the trust. We don't want people to get an answer and then kind of have to backtrace and reverse engineer the answer. We want to make this as clear as possible for users. Secondly, one very cool thing we're doing here, and we presented this at the demo day with Snowflake 2 weeks ago, but what we're doing is we're also validating any query we're writing using zero-copy clones or simulations of the data. And then we're presenting that to users as well. So any change we're making, we're then able to validate and see whether we got the results we wanted We're actually going to post a blog about this next week. So I think this is extremely interesting, and we'll share this in the Slack group as well.
Awesome. So we still have like two more questions. Anyone, if you want to ask anything specific to Omri, feel free to put it in the Q&A section. So the other question we have is like, before suggesting a fix, what does the agent actually validate? Does it run queries, compare row count, execute DBD tests? How does it work, basically, I guess?
Yeah, great question. And that is kind of what I was talking about with the hallucination problem. Essentially, what it does is it tries tests for itself to understand what it's expecting to see from the data after the fix is going to be applied. And what we're doing, again, depending on the technology, but we'll take Snowflake as an example, we're creating zero copy clones of the relevant tables and assets inside Snowflake and running the new transformations that will be applied on top of them. That then allows us to see exactly what the data will look like once we've set the fix and whether that matches our expectations. So we're using a variety of different models to write tests and make sure we're getting the correct answers. And then we're actually able to run them against actual data without affecting your production to validate the answers we're getting. And this can be DBT tests, these can be queries. It depends on the platform you're using, but we are able to actually validate the answers.
Awesome. So the other question we have is, if the agent proposes, let me share it first. If the agent proposes or applies a fix, how is that changed, tracked in version control? Can we see exactly what changed, review it through a pull request, or quickly roll it back if the fix causes another downstream? So
Yeah, again, so I was hoping this would be clear from what we're presenting, but it's a great question because change management is a very big process for data organizations, right? Especially if you work in a regulated industry, you want to make sure that everything you're doing is trackable and auditable. So essentially, the platform doesn't do anything without the user's permission. We're not writing any data or changing pipelines without users approving this. And this fits into the existing change management process that organizations have. So for example, here we can see everything we did was through a pull request. When the agent noticed an issue, it understood which one of the Git repos in the environment it needs to connect to, and then opened the pull request there, telling you exactly what you need to do. The idea is not to just have the agents, and I think that's fundamental in how we want to use agents in data environments. We don't want to give them right permission, just let them do whatever they want. We want them to fit into our change management process like we'd expect any data engineer on our team. So what we're doing is we're actually getting them to write code and write queries and update models that then you run through your existing CI/CD process.
awesome. Any other question, if anyone has, like, please feel free to put it in the Q&A section. And yeah, I'm sorry for some reason the chat is still not working. We'll make sure that we fix it next time. Okay, I see we got another question, which is like, is there any open source alternative for this or not? I'm assuming in context with like this solution.
Uh, so there are a few open source, like there's no open source right now that does all of this end to end. There are open sources that you can look at for creating a context layer, and some do it a better job than others. You can look, for example, at Now Labs if you want. And there are agents that you can use, such as Claude and Cursor. I think where you need to understand how you fit this into your organization in the best way possible, and that can be open source, that can be self-built things, or an off-the-shelf tool like Upriver, is how do you connect all of these different things? How do you make sure that you continuously update the context from the conversations you have in Slack and pull that in as part of what you want to be doing? That is where often we see companies starting to struggle. But this is definitely something that you can try and set up yourself. And what I wanted to show is less just how Upriver does this, but more what is the art of the possible with proactive agents for DataOps? How do we fit them into our workflow, making sure they're everywhere, taking the context, suggesting what you want to do? I think like the best way of thinking about it is kind of like taking OpenClaw and turning it into a data engineer. That is kind of like the concept you want to think about when building this. How do you make it omnipresent so it's helping you without you having to ask it to do things constantly, and building the context and making sure that the context is correct?
Awesome. Omri, I think your video is like froze for a second, but
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry about
mm,
that.
no
Maybe I'll
worries.
stop sharing if
Yeah,
it will let me, or maybe you can stop it
yeah,
sharing for me. Yeah.
yeah. I was just checking on the Slack if we got any side question. Okay, cool. So anyone? Okay, I see. Like, okay. Firstly,
Sorry.
thank you everyone
Yeah,
for
sorry.
joining. And Omri, do you have any other thoughts to share?
No, I think that's it. First of all, thank you all for joining our first webinar. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. And secondly, as Divi and I mentioned a few times, join our Slack community. That's where we'll be posting updates, both on the platform, on the entire data engineering and AI ecosystem that we think is relevant. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah. Again, everyone, thank you so much for your time today. We're aiming to host like one session every month. So feel free to come up with any topic like which you want us to cover in future webinars. So yeah, that would be great. And also, if you wanna try Upriver platform, feel free to reach out to us, or just scan the QR. You'll get access to the system. And yeah, thanks again, everyone.